International help arrives as death toll surpasses 6,000 in Turkey. UN chief warns world is walking into wider war. Palestinian cancer patients denied treatment by Israel. Bosnia marks 29th anniversary of Sarajevo market massacre. Report warns 40% of U.S. animals at risk of extinction. Visiting green spaces weekly may lower need for medications. From our Chicago studios, this is the Muslim News on Muslim Network TV. Assalamu alaikum, I'm Samana Siddiqui. Our top story tonight. International rescue teams have started deploying in Turkey as the earthquake death toll surpassed 7,500 people in the country and in neighboring Syria. The World Health Organization warned the number of casualties could exceed 20,000. Up to 23 million people could be affected, the WHO said. Millions also spent the night without power or heat, and at least 4 Turkish airports were damaged. Turkey announced a 3-month state of emergency in quake-hit provinces. The country is facing one of its biggest disasters in its history and in the world, President Recep Tayyip Erdogan said. He noted that more than 8,000 people have been rescued from the rubble. Turkey has allocated $5.3 billion for emergency aid and support. There are reports of nearly 80 aftershocks, and many survivors are sleeping outside in freezing temperatures. Salahuddin Hawa, speaking to Muslim News Today from Aleppo, informed that 90% of houses in Junta, Syria have collapsed. Junta was a small town of a few thousand people. However, after the Syrian civil war, it now houses 200,000 internally displaced people. There is a dire need for heavy equipment to dig people out. War-torn parts of Syria, still free from the Assad regime, are struggling to get access to much-needed medical support and aid. The Syrian American Medical Society, or SAMS, is reporting that its medical facilities are overwhelmed with patients filling the hallways. SAMS supports at least 36 medical facilities in the affected region of northwest Syria. So far, at least 4 of SAMS medical facilities have been damaged, and 3 of those are so severely damaged that they have been put out of service. The organization is evacuating patients from hospitals and facilities which have sustained severe damage to safer facilities. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres on Monday warned of a wider war over the conflict in Ukraine. Guterres said the chances of further escalation and bloodshed keep growing. He laid out his priorities for 2023 in a speech to the 193-member UN General Assembly. Guterres painted a dire picture for the year ahead, pointing to several problems. These include the Russian aggression in Ukraine, climate change, extreme poverty, and wars. He said the Russian invasion of Ukraine is inflicting untold suffering on the Ukrainian people with profound global implications. He added that other conflicts threatening global peace include the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, Afghanistan, the Sahel, Burma, and Haiti. A neo-Nazi leader and his associate appeared in court today in relation to their plot to destroy Baltimore. A federal criminal complaint charges Brandon Clint Russell of Orlando and Sarah Beth Clendaniel of Maryland with conspiracy to destroy an energy facility. The defendants were arrested last Friday. Assistant Attorney General for National Security Matthew G. Olson said the defendants schemed to attack local power grid facilities and said they were driven by racially motivated hatred. He added the Justice Department will not tolerate those who threaten critical infrastructure and imperil communities in the name of domestic violent extremism. According to the criminal complaint, the defendants were allegedly taking specific steps to carry out their plans, including selecting targets and trying to illegally acquire a rifle. If convicted, Russell and Clendaniel face a maximum sentence of 20 years each in federal prison. New research shows 34% of plant species and 40% of animal species in the United States are at risk of extinction, while 41% of its ecosystems could collapse. That's according to an analysis published Monday by the nonprofit NatureServe. The NatureServe network has been collecting information for 50 years to understand threats to biodiversity in the United States. Reagan Smith, Group Vice President for Data and Methods, said this new analysis makes crystal clear the urgency of that work. She said 2/5 of the U.S. ecosystems are in trouble. Freshwater invertebrates and many pollinators are in precipitous decline, she said. The report notes roughly 1/3 of plants are in danger. It found that 48% of cactus species and about 200 tree species are at risk of extinction. Disgraced far-right InfoWars host Alex Jones warned on his show on Sunday that foaming at the mouth Black people would wage war on white populations. The conspiracy theorist said this would be after fleeing race-specific bioweapons attacks in Africa later this decade. Jones issued these racist predictions while declaring himself a vessel of God. He warned of an invasion from the refugees of economic warfare in Africa. He added, the big giant African hordes are being brainwashed and the left is programming brown people to hate white people. Jones encouraged responding through violence to such threats. We're bringing more news stories after the break, so stay tuned and we'll be right back. Welcome back. The Palestinian Health Ministry on Saturday accused Israel of denying cancer patients the right to medical treatment abroad. Khalid Thabit, head of the ministry's oncology department, told Anadolu agency Israel deprives 40% of cancer patients in Gaza access to medical treatment abroad. He cited Israeli restrictions that prevent the entry of necessary medicines to patients there. The health ministry official said hospitals in the Palestinian territory face a huge shortage of radiotherapy services. According to the health ministry, there were over 5,300 cancer patients in the Palestinian territories by 2021, including close to 2,000 patients in Gaza. It said cancer is the third highest cause of deaths in the Palestinian territories. Al-Mizan Center for Human Rights called for an end to Israeli restrictions on Palestinian access to healthcare services. Gaza is home to nearly 2.3 million people. It has been reeling under a years-long Israeli blockade since 2007. Scores of Sudanese demonstrated in the capital Khartoum on Sunday to protest the normalization of relations with Israel. On Thursday, Israeli Foreign Minister Eli Cohen visited Sudan, meeting with Army Chief General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan. Cohen said the two countries have finalized the text of a peace agreement that will be signed later this year, CNN reports. Protesters gathered in central Khartoum, waving banners condemning the normalization of ties between Sudan and Israel, Anadolu agency reported. Palestine not for sale and Khartoum won't betray Jerusalem were among the slogans on the banners. Al-Burhan, the head of Sudan's ruling sovereign council, previously met with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in February 2020 in Entebbe, Uganda. Sudan is the sixth Arab country to establish relations with Israel. The World Uyghur Congress recently commemorated the 26th anniversary of the Ghulja massacre. On February 5, 1997, thousands of Uyghurs gathered in Ghulja in East Turkestan, which the Chinese government calls Xinjiang. They had assembled for a peaceful protest against continued Chinese aggression. They were also protesting the prohibition of the Uyghur Mishrep, a social gathering celebrating Uyghur culture. Chinese security forces brutally cracked down on demonstrators, killing at least 100, injuring many more, and arresting nearly 4,000 demonstrators, of which 200 subsequently received the death penalty. The World Uyghur Congress said freedom of speech and assembly have been fully eroded as part of the Uyghur genocide. It urged the international community to take firm action to restore Uyghur human rights. Bosnians gathered on Sunday to commemorate the 29th anniversary of a 1994 massacre in which 68 people were killed and nearly 150 injured. The Markale marketplace shelling was among the bloodiest massacres committed by Bosnian Serb forces during the siege of Sarajevo from April 1992 to December 1995. In a ceremony in the Bosnian capital, participants paid tribute, laid wreaths, and prayed for the dead. Attendees included family members of the victims, survivors, and politicians. Sarajevo Canton Labor and Social Policies Minister Ivana Prulovic said people hid in bunkers and basements for protection during the nearly 4-year siege. Over 11,000 civilians were killed, while more than 50,000 were injured. Prulovic said many people went missing because of the atrocities. Burma's military regime returned 423 Muslims to Butidong and Mungdao townships in Arakan state after they attempted to leave for overseas destinations. The refugees were sent back in 2 vessels and were detained while attempting to leave the country illegally, a source said. The Muslims, including women and children, were detained in Magwe, Bago, Taninthiari, and Yangon regions while in transit from Arakan state. Muslims in Arakan continue to flee the state to find work elsewhere in the country or abroad. They risk arrest and prosecution on immigration charges with potential imprisonment of up to 5 years. Authorities have imposed strict travel restrictions on Muslims in Arakan state following widespread intercommunal violence between Buddhists and Muslims in 2012. After a decade of travel restrictions, Muslims are increasingly attempting to leave for better living conditions. Hanging out in a local park, lake, or garden could be an antidote to ill health for city dwellers, according to a recent Finnish study. Researchers found a lower use of drugs for depression, anxiety, insomnia, high blood pressure, and asthma among urban residents who often visit green spaces. The results were uniform regardless of income or education levels. The Finnish team said the frequency of visits to urban green spaces, rather than simply viewing them from your house, was key. It looked at the number of green and blue spaces within a community, comparing the frequency of visits to views of such spaces from home. The team chose prescription meds as a proxy for ill health, particularly for those with anxiety and insomnia, depression, high blood pressure, and asthma. The study draws on the responses of 16,000 randomly selected residents of the country's three largest urban areas, Helsinki, Espoo, and Vantaa. Previous studies have suggested exposure to natural environments is good for health and well-being. Coming up next after the break is our in-depth analysis segment, so stay tuned and we'll be right back. Welcome back. To discuss the current situation of rescue and relief operations in Syria, let's go to Imam Abdul Malik Mujahid. Over to you, Imam Mujahid.
Thank you, Samana. Situation inside Syria, not many people are aware of. We're, thanks to communication with Turkey and a proper government, we know what is going on there. 5,000 buildings have been counted as demolished, but people, by now, as I do this program, 6,300 people are confirmed dead, and probably 30, 40,000 are injured. But these are coming mostly from Turkey. What's happening in Syria? And especially the part of Syria which has been devastated by Syrian and Russian and Iranian bombing, which is a part of free Syria. But there are more than 4 million people living in a horrible situation to begin with. We have someone who is right there in North Aleppo, and he is Salahuddin Ali Hawa. Welcome to Muslim Network TV.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
What is the situation around you? I see you are in Aleppo, Syria. What are the things which you are seeing there?
Well, brother, right now, as we started, preparing for this interview, a few minutes ago only, we had a new aftermath earthquake, and it is maybe 5 point something, 5.4 or something like that. And the center is close to Diyarbakir and Kahramanmaraş in Turkey, but we really felt it and in the north of Syria, because you know that we are quite close to Gaziantep and to that place. Now, very quickly, let me put you in the situation here. Right now, we are 38 hours after two devastating earthquakes, which happened subsequently to each other. Both of them are 7 point something, according to Richter scale. And both of them were really devastating. And maybe the most devastating one was the second one, because in the second earthquake, all the houses which were about to collapse, they really collapsed in the second earthquake, which happened 8 hours after the first one. So, of course, apart from about 150 aftermath tremors so far. As you said, that we have around 2,000 people killed, victims in Turkey, and more than 5,000 injured. We have about 1/3 of that number here in the north of Syria. About 1/3 of that number, we have about more than 1,100 people are killed in this devastating earthquake. I'm talking about north and northwest of Syria, the area which is liberated from the hands of the brutal Assad regime and its allies. You know that in this area, we are around 5 million people crowded here because we are forced, displaced from our homes in the cities of Syria at the hands of the Assad regime and its allies, the Russians, the Iranians, and the militias, and the militias that are pro-Assad. And all those people, the 5 million people, we have tens of thousands of them are living under tents in this very cold weather, under the snowstorms and the rainstorms that are happening nowadays. uh, just to tell you right now, as I am talking to you, we are, the temperature outside is 0 minus. And right now, after around 38 hours of the first earthquake, still there are thousands of people under rubble. And the rescue teams are not able to rescue all of them, maybe because of the lack of the scarcity of the heavy equipment at the hands or in the hands of the white helmets, the civil defense, who are maybe working day and night to in order, because they are racing the time, because right now every moment matters. Right now, as I am talking to you, lots of civilians are under rubble and calling for help, appealing for help. And the guys who are working to rescue them are unable to do anything because sometimes they need heavy equipment. And this heavy equipment is not available here. And maybe the only country which we previously depended on in cases such as this was Turkey. But right now, even Turkey needs help. So you see, this is the equation now. Turkey needs help, and Turkey was the only party which helped us. Right now is, in need of help. And you know that the international community is maybe indifferent about our agony, about our sufferings. They are just watching what's happening here and doing nothing at all. So time is running out, and people are, every one moment, maybe we lose a life under rubble. This is really horrible.
We're talking with Salahuddin, who is in Aleppo, Syria, where things are devastating and people are in the rubble and there is no equipment to dig them out. Uh, Salahuddin, is it possible if people ask Turkey, I mean, the country is providing help to Turkey, that some of that equipment could, are there roads possible for heavy equipment to travel to Aleppo to save people?
Well,
Or you think helicopters will is the only way to reach there?
let me just explain this to you. Right now, apart from those tens of thousands of people who are living under tents, there are even tens or even hundreds of thousands of people who are living under houses that are especially built for them as a replacement or as a substitution for the tents. And those houses were very quickly built, and they are not really safe. And with the first earthquake, all those houses collapsed completely. We have complete, squares or complete, let me say, cities, which completely collapsed over the people, because you know that the earthquake happened even before dawn. Before dawn time, it was, 4:20 or 20 past 4 in the early morning. So people were asleep, and the earthquake happened, and they couldn't even escape. They couldn't go out of the house. That's why you see that complete families are under rubble. So this is the situation here. We have, even right now, as I am talking to you, hundreds of families are still under rubble. And Turkey, in that case, cannot handle both catastrophes in Turkey and here. That's why we need urgent help from all the countries around the world. that they allow heavy equipment. Maybe they can, hand in those equipment to Turkey, and Turkey can, in cooperation with the Turkish army inside the north part of Syria, can work on providing the logistic infrastructure for these teams and for these heavy equipment to start working and digging out people from under rubble. And the problem is that we are running out of time. We cannot wait until we have, let me say, summits or preparations. Right now the time is for saving people. There are lives under rubble, and they are appealing for us, please help us. And if I may allow you to listen to some very small little children saying that, addressing the white helmets, the civil defense, telling them that, uncle, I am still alive, please take me out. But those can do nothing in that way, because they don't have the equipment that allows them to break the roofs and the iron of the roofs, and to take those guys or those small children out. The situation is really catastrophic, and we are watching our brothers and sisters, little children, women, dying under the rubble, and we can do nothing in that case. And in our situation, we do not only need aid like food or even medical appliances, medical medicines, etc. Right now we need heavy equipment, bulldozers, trucks, etc., to be able to take rubble, the rubble away, and to take people out from under the rubble and save their lives.
You mentioned the houses which were built temporarily, all of them have collapsed. Do you have any idea? Were there 10,000 houses, 20,000 houses? How many houses were there which are completely gone?
Where we have at least 2,000 houses of that type, and we have other thousands of houses that were not temporarily built, and even those houses collapsed because they that we are in the Middle East. We are in the third world, in a third world country, and houses were not built to resist any kind of earthquake. And that earthquake was the first you know in 150 years, in you know that strength. That's why we feel that right now we are racing time in order to save the rest of the people. And right now the problem that is next to be solved is those houses that we are still living in right now, which are about to collapse, and they cannot be lived in. Maybe my house is similar to that case. I'm living quite close to the masjid, and the minaret of the masjid is about to collapse. So I was obliged to take my family out and to go to our neighbor's house to live there. And this is the case with hundreds or even thousands of families who are looking for what we think as safer houses to stay in during the night, in order to avoid any new collapse of the houses which were about to collapse. So right now we are, our priority right now is to take the people who are still alive, at least, from under the rubble. And next we are, the next priority is to find new houses for those who have lost their houses, or for those whose houses are about to collapse. The situation is really complicated. It is a humanitarian and political situation at the same time. That's why the solution for our situation here is political first. We have to get rid of that brutal regime which caused lots of these problems for the Syrian people here. This is a priority after we take people out of the rubble.
share with me in the area where you are, your mosque minaret, for example, was shaking and may fall down. May God save people around it. But tell me this: in your neighborhood, say about 30% houses are gone, or what is? How many houses are unstable or unlivable at this moment?
Where we have at least 2,000 houses of that case, of that type, and we have other thousands of houses that were not temporarily built, and even those houses collapsed because they, that we are, in the Middle East. We are in the third world, in a third world country, and houses were not built, to resist any kind of earthquake. And that earthquake was the first, in 150 years, in you know that strength. That's why we feel that right now we are, racing time in order to save the rest of the people. And right now the problem that is next to be solved is those houses that we are still living in right now, which are about to collapse, and they cannot be lived in. Maybe my house is similar to that case. I'm living quite close to the masjid, and the minaret of the masjid is about to collapse. So I was obliged to take my family out and to go to our neighbor's house to live there. And this is the case with hundreds or even thousands of families who are looking for what we think as safer houses to stay in during the night, in order to avoid any new collapse of the houses which were about to collapse. So right now we are, our priority right now is to take the people who are still alive, at least, from under the rubble. And next we are, the next priority is to find new houses for those who have lost their houses, or for those whose houses are about to collapse. The situation is really complicated. It is a humanitarian and political situation at the same time. That's why the solution for our situation here is political first. We have to get rid of that brutal regime which caused lots of these problems for the Syrian people here. This is a priority after we take people out of the rubble.
What was the
And
population of that Jandarin city where you're saying 90%?
more than more than 200,000 people are living there. And right now, around 90% of the houses collapsed. Maybe if they didn't collapse in the first earthquake, which happened at dawn, uh, on Tuesday, on Monday, the other day, which was about 8 hours after the first earthquake, the other houses collapsed. The houses which were about to collapse after the first earthquake collapsed after the second earthquake. And right now, as I am talking to you, I told you at the very beginning of the interview that a few minutes ago we had a new earthquake here, which is about 5 point something. New houses collapsed in the city of Azaz. The city of Azaz is quite close to Kilis, the borders with Turkey. So every now and then, even with the aftermath earthquakes, aftermath tremors, we have new houses falling apart. And the reason is because of the first earthquake, that these houses are not able to stand, and face new tremors.
Well, thank you so much, Brother Salahuddin, for your time. Truly appreciate that.
Thank you so much for your interest. Thank you
Amen.
for that. I'm grateful.
Back to you, Samana.
That's all from our Chicago studios tonight. Thank you for tuning in. You can find previous episodes and more on our YouTube or Facebook. For more content, keep watching Muslim Network TV or visit muslimnetwork.tv. Salam and good night.